Holy understeer, Batman. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a 2023 Mazda 3 Turbo all-wheel drive. And this car we've actually been driving for the last few days out here in Milwaukee. I think it's a sharp-looking car. I'm very much a fan of the front end. The rear end, I think is a little bit more polarizing, depending on whether or not you like that little bulbous, more organic shape and flow to it. Very sharp, dark accent pieces. I'm loving Mazda's new design language. These little halos around the headlights, very nice touch. One thing to keep in mind is that the cargo space in a hatchback like this is, it might not be as big as you're expecting when you're considering the competition, but it is going to be practical enough for most people and for most use cases, but keep that in mind. A lot of people are getting hatchbacks for the added practicality, and it might not be as much space as you need depending on your use case. MSRP on this fully loaded Mazda 3, a little over $35,000, and now let's see how she drives. We're joined by the one and only Fenton Sun from the Zygreen YouTube channel.
I've done this today with you driving and me sitting here.
It's one of my favorite things to do, drive a car with the JDM Whisperer in the passenger seat. So first impressions of the interior. A nice, familiar place for me. I own a 2023 Mazda CX-50, and the design language of the interior is very similar. In the space, in this segment, I would say that this design, the materials, probably best in class. Now, Honda has definitely upped their game with the Honda Civic, and they would be a close second, but I still give the edge out to Mazda. You get this really nice, soft leather. It's like a reddish color here. Nice stitching, nice materials. We have some of the more polished metal look, a little more chrome here, more matte on the steering wheel. Piano black in the center console, which as you can see, gets kind of scuffed up, and this is why I personally am not a big fan, because over time, it doesn't look so good. It looks good in the showroom, but not so much once you start putting some miles on it. Love the physical HVAC controls. Thank you, Mazda, for giving us physical touch, proper buttons, and not the nonsense that we're seeing elsewhere.
The Mark 8 Golf that we drove, oh, what a disaster.
I had some problems with that interior. We got a nice little shelf here for the HVAC, very similar to my Mazda CX-50, although this does not come with ventilated seats. Not a huge deal. We do have heated seats still. In terms of the actual infotainment, this screen is smaller, and it doesn't have the thin bezels that I really enjoy with my Mazda CX-50. So I'm definitely noticing, you see a lot of thick bezel here, on the side as well. Still a... Thanks for checking the solidity. Is it
making sure? It's solid. It's solid like the rest of this interior.
Is it set in place well? So overall, I'd say nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't stand out as a strong point for me. Small thing most of you won't notice, but compared to the CX-50, that does stick out to me as being different. In terms of the actual gauges we have, similar to the CX-50, we have a digital display in the center where you can actually cycle through different displays. You have your vehicle like this, and you have a more traditional analog mimicked display, and then this one as well that has some driving information. You have analog on the left and right for your tach, as well as your fuel and temperature gauges, and I do wish that Mazda got a little bit more creative with what they could show on the center, because even when you have this, you're not seeing all that much. You do have some lane keep, but not lane centering, and you do have radar guided cruise control, which works well, but there are other options if you want some driving assists that are a little bit more advanced with the competition. Now, with that being said, let's see how she drives. Now, we're powered by a 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, cranking out 227 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. This is the same 2.5 turbo inline-4 that you see in most of Mazda's lineup, apart from the CX-90, which has that new inline-6 turbo. And this engine, I think, makes a lot of sense in kind of commuter vehicles because it's very torquey. The way it's tuned, it almost feels like a diesel engine. It pulls quite hard, a good amount of torque, from very low, from close to idle, all the way up to around 5,000 RPM. That's auto shifting for me, even though I'm in manual mode. The transmission as well, 6-speed auto, slush box, but it's a very well dialed in 6-speed auto. Now, a lot of people say, hey, this is old tech, you gotta have more speeds, you gotta have more advanced transmissions, but for this use case, I think it's actually completely fine. The reason being that the shifts are smooth, they're fast enough, and because of the tuning of the engine, you don't actually feel that you're not in the power band between shifts. So the spacing of the actual gear ratios can be wider, and you're gonna still be in the power band. Not really an issue. One thing I will say, however, is fuel efficiency with this engine is not a strong suit. Now, we are getting 27.3 mpg. On average, it's mostly been highway driving in the last couple days that we've had this vehicle, but I never really trust these displays. I personally use Fuely on my phone whenever I'm fueling up vehicles, because then you can actually measure the true mileage and the true amount of fuel that your car is taking. And I found that these estimates are usually off by 1 or 2 mpgs in one direction or another. So who is Mazda designing this vehicle for? And I think the approach that Mazda took is they're putting more of their time and energy in trying to move more upscale, but at the same time, they want to be affordable and they don't want to, move too far away from their roots. And what you have is this kind of interesting mix mash of approach. So the actual suspension geometry in the rear is torsion beam. It's cheaper, it's not going to be as refined of a ride, and there are instances where you can definitely feel that, especially when you have uneven surfaces. The rear end is not quite as polished and well put together as a vehicle like a Civic Si. Now, in terms of driving dynamics, Mazda is not trying to make this a razor edge hot hatch by any means. I think what Mazda is going for here, from what I can tell in the driver's seat, is a vehicle that is more comfortable than anything, but can be peppy and fun, but that's not its main purpose. So, for example, the steering ratio is quite slow, and even when I'm turning the wheel, there's definitely a lag between the steering input and then the car moving. The suspension is a little bit softer. You're not having a razor edge 8 or 9/10 driving experience with this car. This is a vehicle that is tuned in a way, from everything from the engine to the suspension to the inputs, that is more about having a comfortable daily driver commuter where you're not going to be bored. The steering is slower ratio, but it's very direct. I'm not feeling, apart from the slight lag, I'm not feeling any slop to the wheel. But I wish it had kind of that same level of feedback from the CX-50. I don't know what they did on the CX-50. That steering rack is straight magic, and I would have loved to see that same level of feedback and steering tuning in this vehicle as well. It's kind of interesting when you look at how Mazda is approaching this segment. They're trying to move a little bit more upscale. So Honda, they're approaching it in a slightly different way, where they're not compromising on the driving dynamics and the actual geometry and the engineering behind it. Whereas Mazda is trying to be a little bit more budget there, and Mazda perhaps is spending more money in refining the interior quality, and also they're going for a little bit more of a softer and slightly more, not quite luxurious, but aiming in that direction with the personality of the car. So it very much depends on what you want. I'd also say the Honda Civic Si, keep in mind, it's a few $1,000s cheaper than this. And this engine really dies off at the top end in a very stereotypical turbo fashion. Also doesn't sound the greatest. Yeah, these brakes are not inspiring confidence.
Soft pedal.
The all-wheel drive system is front-wheel drive biased, front-wheel drive based. So you're not having keep in mind, guys, if you're a driving enthusiast, you're not getting the most dynamic, rewarding, exciting experience when you're pushing this. This is more of one of those cars where you're gonna be relaxed.
That's very odd.
For some reason, not letting me turn off traction control, although we are in sport mode. Holy understeer, Batman. You know, I love what Mazda is doing here. They're really moving up market. They're expanding what they've been known for in the past. And I don't think they're gonna, you can't expect them to nail everything at the very beginning. I think Mazda's done a very good job here with this vehicle. I think the engine character could be changed slightly. We are getting 250 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque with premium fuel, and 227 and 310 respectively with regular unleaded. So the engine feels plenty powerful. You have enough torque for regular commuting, but I wish it didn't die off so much at the top end. And I understand that, when you're commuting, putting around town, you want more low-end torque than high-end power. But I feel like there could be a way to better balance that for the character of this vehicle. Because when I think of a hatchback that's turbocharged all-wheel drive, I do want to have a little bit more sportiness. And Mazda, again, they're trying to move more up market. They're trying to be a little bit more luxurious. Yeah, this is not the kind of car that you want to be carving canyons with. And not every hatchback needs that necessarily. But I would definitely enjoy this car a little bit more, and it would be a vehicle that I recommend to my friends and family more wholeheartedly. Fenton, anything else you'd like to add? Mazda 3?
I agree with your assessment. This is not a hot hatch. It's borderline not even a warm hatch. It's
a lukewarm hatch.
It's a lukewarm hatch, and it's very nice for what it is. It's peppy, it's quick enough. Just don't expect it to be all that fun to drive. It's not a zoom type of Mazda. It's not a Mazda Speed 3. It's
Mazda, please bring back the Mazda Speed 3.
honestly,
we'd love that.
any Mazda Speed Miata, give us something exciting again.
Thank you for watching, my friends. Let me know, what do you think? Would you choose this vehicle? Would you choose the Civic Si, another competitor? Leave a comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Fenton's channel called Zygreen, linked below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, ribs, chilies, baby.